Okay, welcome back. This week we have Saili Bhatkar from ICER Pune, who's going to tell us about new asymptotic conservation laws for electromagnetism. Saili, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So I would like to thank the organizers for this chance to speak here. So let us start. So this is the brief overview of my talk. We'll start by discussing what are asymptotic conservation laws and also what are soft theorems. And then we will discuss the equivalence between these two statements. Then we will move on to what are called as laws. So the forces
Sorry.
that fall, yeah.
No, sorry, there was something weird happening with the sound, but I think it's fixed now. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So this long range forces are the forces
Siley,
that
1 minute. Again, it started.
Oh,
But now it's gone.
is it some sort of echo?
No, it's like some noise. Like how radios used to get stuck. I don't know like how to say it.
There may be some other device there. Is there some
Yeah.
other device? It sounds like a feedback or something.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so it seems like you hear that noise when I speak.
Yeah.
Is that the case?
Yeah, now it went away. Yeah, but yeah.
Okay.
Again now.
Hello?
Hello?
Yes,
Is it
this is...
still there?
No,
No,
this is
no.
good.
It's good. Okay, good. Huh. Okay, so let me just go ahead. So these long range forces are the forces that fall out one by
Siley, it's there again now. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay. Shit. Okay, I'm going to pause recording for a second.
Okay, good. Okay, so we will discuss this long-range electromagnetic forces, and these forces are such that the effect of these forces doesn't die off sufficiently fast at infinity. So they have non-trivial effect on the asymptotic dynamics. So they'll take into account this effect, the effect of the long-range electromagnetic force on the charged particles, and show that this leads to a new set of asymptotic conservation laws. Okay, this is the main result of the talk. Then we'll discuss some implications of this conservation laws. In general, it is expected that there would be new soft theorems related to this asymptotic conservation laws in the quantum theory. Okay, so then we will conclude. Okay, so let's start with soft theorems. A particle is said to be soft if its energy tends to zero. That is, the energy of the particle is smaller than other energy scales of the problem. So in particular, let us discuss leading soft photon theorem. So in this, the particle which is whose energy is taken to zero is a photon. So we will discuss a general n+1 point amplitude in QED, and omega is the energy of the photon that is taken to be soft. In general, the sum of all the n+1 momenta. So pi are the momenta which are finite. So I runs from 1 to n, and k is the momentum of the soft photon. Now, in the limit when omega tends to 0, the leading order term in this n+1 point amplitude goes like 1 over omega. And actually, we see that the amplitude factorizes into a factor times the lower point amplitude, the lower n point amplitude without the soft photon. And this is called a soft factor. So let us take a look at this soft factor. So this soft factor is of following form. Here EI are the charges of the hard particles, the other n particles. So, similarly, Pi are the moment of the other hard particles. Epsilon is the polarization vector of the soft photon. So here we see that all the dependence at this order on the soft photon is restricted to this polarization vector, and this Q represents the angle of the soft photon, the angle at which the soft photon moves. So that dependence is via the soft factor. And the form of this soft factor is same for all the processes. That's why this is called a theorem that this soft factor is universal. Now, it can be shown that this leading soft photon theorem is uncorrected by all loop orders. It is an exact quantum statement. And this leading soft photon theorem shows really remarkable universality. It is the form of the soft factor is same in all space-time dimensions. It is uncorrected by non-minimal couplings that you can add to the theory. And so this universality is actually related to the fact that the leading soft photon theorem is related to a symmetry of qubit. This kind of symmetries are called asymptotic symmetries. And here it is called as large gauge transformations. Now the asymptotic symmetry is a subgroup of the gauge group of the theory. So in this case it is U1. So it is a subgroup of the U1 gauge transformations such that the parameter of the transformation, it doesn't go to 0 at infinity. So we have finite charges corresponding to these transformations and they act non-trivially on our state. Now, so we can discuss the conservation laws corresponding to this symmetry. Let us do that. So these are called as asymptotic conservation laws. So this is the asymptotic structure of Minkowski spacetime. We have Scri plus, which is the future null infinity. We have Scri minus, which is the past null infinity. Now massless particles in the far past, they start at Scri minus, and in the far future, that is as t tends to plus infinity, they reach Scri plus. So this Scri plus is labeled by U. U runs from minus infinity to plus infinity. And in particular, we'll be interested in this Scri plus minus, which is the U goes to minus infinity sphere of future null infinity. Similarly, Scri minus plus is the V goes to plus infinity sphere of the past null infinity. Okay. Now the asymptotic conservation laws take following form. The future charge is defined at Scri plus minus on this particular sphere at the boundary, and the past charge is defined at Scri minus plus. Here epsilon denote the parameter of the transformation, and the parameter at the future is related to the parameter at the past via an antipodal map. Okay, so this is the statement of a general asymptotic conservation law. Okay.
Saili,
Yes.
what is the reason for this antipodal mapping?
Yeah. So in general, it is related to the fact that if you take null generators,
Okay.
or then they map. So if you just start, if you consider the sphere at infinity, if you start at a point in the past, then and you continue it through to the future to t goes to plus infinity, then it reaches the like the opposite point, diametrically opposite point.
Okay.
And that is the reason for this antipodal map.
Okay, fine. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So let us discuss a particular conservation law where this Q0, the charge is defined in terms of the radial component of the electric field. Now, how typically we can verify this conservation law is just calculate explicitly the radial component of the electric field, evaluate it at Scri plus minus, and then also evaluate it at Scri minus plus independently, and then we can check that these modes are equal under antipodal map. Okay, so this is a general statement of the asymptotic conservation law. Now, at the level of quantum theory, the S matrix has to satisfy the odd identity with respect to these charges, which just says that the commutator of the charges with S matrix is 0. And it has been shown that this word identity is exactly equivalent to the leading soft theorem. This was shown by Hay, Mitra, Porphyriadis, Strominger. So this group, Strominger and his collaborators, were first to propose this kind of equivalence. They showed that the soft theorems can be understood as word identities of asymptotic charges, such that these asymptotic charges satisfy a conservation law of this form in the classical theory. Okay. Now this has been later on demonstrated in many different contexts. It has been demonstrated for gravitational theories, also for QCD. Okay. So this is the equivalence between asymptotic conservation laws on one hand and the soft theorems, which are the statements in quantum at the level of quantum amplitudes. Okay, and this concept, yeah.
Can this be derived independently? This word identity.
Yeah, so here you have the expression for the charge. Then you just
Right.
contact those operators,
Uh-huh.
and then you can check its commutator with the S matrix. So you can evaluate this the action of this operators on the outstates and instates.
I see.
Okay, that is how you can have this word identity independently. And then whatever you get from the word identity, you can check it with the leading software on here
Okay.
and show that these two are equal.
Okay, fine. Okay, thanks. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes. Yes. Now we go to subleading soft theorems. Now at tree level, so if we study the soft expansion of tree amplitudes, then the subleading term goes like a constant, omega to the power 0. So this term is also universal. S1, you can show that it is universal. And also the asymptotic conservation law corresponding to this term has been studied. This was given by Campaglia and Ladda, and that is understood. But what we really want to understand is this loop corrections to these statements. So we study the soft expansion of loop amplitudes. So the leading order term 1 by omega is uncorrected. This S0 is the same S0 that appears at the tree level. But we see that at subleading order, something drastic happens. So there is a log omega term at subleading order. This term was completely absent in the tree level analysis. And this term also dominates the constant mode in the omega, 0 omega limit. So this is the subleading term now. So this term was first derived by Bishwajit Sahu and Ashok Sen in 2018. They derived this coefficient explicitly. They showed that it is universal. They also showed that it is one loop exact. So this is a very significant result. We have a new subleading Short-Photon theorem for QED, which is one loop exact. Okay. So an obvious question that we can ask at this point is that is this new soft theorem related to an asymptotic conservation law? Okay, so that will be our goal. Our goal is to understand if the log omega soft photon theorem is related to a new asymptotic conservation law. Okay.
Sally, I have a question.
Yes. Yes.
So you mentioned that the log omega piece is one loop exact.
Yes.
So I was wondering if there is a short answer for why it is one loop. It's not corrected by higher loops. Is there a simple way to understand this, or is that just a result of some calculation?
Yeah, I don't know of a simple way to understand that, but there might be. I don't know.
Because usually one loop exactness is something that we associate with. I don't know. Like for example, anomalies are typically one loop exact, and then you have sometimes in supersymmetric theories you have, because of a higher amount of symmetry or something, there's one loop exactness. But I was wondering if there is an understanding of why it's one loop exact.
Yeah, see here also this result like it exponentiates. Okay. And then you can argue that it is one loop exact. But if there is a simple way to without doing an explicit calculation, that I'm not sure about.
On the other hand, if we ask the converse question, is this so if some asymptotic conservation law gives some word identity which relates to this soft theorem, can this be taken as a motivation? Since this is a one loop exact result, we are looking for something that exists in the quantum theory, which might be some word identity. Can we think that way? Or?
Yeah. So let me see if I understand your converse question. So you are trying to say that the new asymptotic conservation law would be exact. Mm-hmm. Is that what you're saying? And then the word identity that follows from it should be exact. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. So even there, proving that higher order corrections are absent is a hard question because.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Go on. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think. It will follow from my calculations also. So I'm doing calculations perturbatively in the coupling. So, so in general, to like argue that certain result is exact is difficult because of our approach itself, which is perturbative.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I was trying to ask is there might be a deeper, word identity which we don't know yet, or which might be, what you are suggesting and so on. So that might give the answer eventually. So is there a hope like that?
Yeah, I didn't understand your question actually.
Oh, as in, suppose because like in the cases Madhu is saying, the quantum part is well understood that there is SUSY and therefore some result is one loop exact, right? So here the asymptotic symmetry as a word identity is not, as of yet may not be well understood in the quantum theory, right? But suppose one finds that in a fundamental way, then that might explain why this is one loop exact. Can we think that way? Or?
Yeah, right. True.
Okay.
Yeah, but we don't yet understand the symmetry.
Right. Okay. Fine.
Yeah. Okay. So, so now how do we proceed? Like, how do we get a new asymptotic conservation law? So, for that, we will discuss the physical origin behind the log omega modes, and the log omega modes are intimately related to these long range forces. So, we discussed that the forces that follow 1 by r potential are called long range forces, and these have non-trivial effect at the asymptotics of our spacetime. So, for example, we can study the trajectory of a point particle that moves in a 1 by r potential, and then we can discuss the behavior of this trajectory at late times. At late times, it takes following form. This is just the free part, and we see that the free part of the trajectory is corrected by a log t. So as t goes to infinity, this doesn't go to 0, and the particles continue to radiate. They continue to accelerate, and as a result, they will continue to radiate. Okay, so this is what I discussed, that the particles are not free; they will radiate, and we can show that this radiation contributes to this log omega mode. Okay. So this is the key point, that the log omega mode appears because of the long range electromagnetic force that is present between the scattering particles. Okay.
So, Saili, just to what you're going to do now is just in 4 dimensions, right? This log omega soft theorem
Yes.
is a 4-dimensional thing.
Right.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. So you see, if you go to higher dimensions, then this will fall off like 1 over t
Right.
or 1 over higher powers.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so this is our plan. So our goal is to arrive at new asymptotic conservation law that would be related to log omega soft theorem. So we will discuss a general classical scattering process of charged particles, and we will include the effect of long range electromagnetic force perturbatively. This will give rise to new modes in the asymptotic field, which are related to the acceleration under these long range forces. And we will show that certain modes, like certain class of these new modes, obey conservation laws. Okay, so this is how we will proceed. Are there any questions? Now we come to the main part of the talk. Okay. So let me discuss a general scattering process. So this is just a rough picture. This is not an exact picture. So we have some n prime number of particles. So these particles there are some n prime arbitrary number of them that come in, and they interact within this sphere. And as a result of this interaction, some arbitrary number of particles are produced, which we denote by n prime plus 1 to n. So they interact within this sphere, and as a result of this interaction, the particles will radiate, and there will be some outgoing radiation that goes to Scribe plus, the future null infinity. Okay. Now within this sphere, the particles might follow very complicated trajectories that would depend on the short range forces that are present between the particles. The particles can do very complicated things, like they might break up into smaller pieces, they might merge, or any other things. That would depend on the short range forces that are present between them. Now we will choose a sphere of radius capital L such that the length of this sphere would depend on the strength of the short range forces, such that beyond this sphere we can ignore the effect of the short range forces. Okay, so by going sufficiently far away, we can ignore the effect of this short range forces. That is how we choose this sphere. So for r greater than L, the trajectory of the particles is fairly controllable. Okay, but still we have to worry about the long range forces. So because as we discussed earlier, the long range forces are such that we cannot ignore them just by going to large distances. So this asymptotic trajectories, there we just need to worry about the long range forces. Okay, and in so our aim is to calculate the asymptotic electromagnetic field that is generated by this scattering event. Okay, so this is what I discussed, that for r greater than capital L, for this asymptotic part of the trajectories, we need to keep track of the long range electromagnetic force that acts on the charged particles. Okay, this is how we will proceed. So we will calculate the asymptotic field strength F mu nu, and we will do it perturbatively in the coupling E and the asymptotic parameter 1 by tau. Okay, so restricting ourselves to the leading order, then we can ignore the effect of the long range forces completely. So at the leading order, the particles are just free. So this is the trajectory of an incoming particle. So for tau, which is less than minus L, so when the sphere has not yet entered, the particle has not yet entered the sphere, the particle moves on a straight line. It is a free particle. Inside, once it enters the sphere, it can do complicated things. But up to that point, it moves on a straight line. Similarly, an outgoing particle will have a trajectory of following form. When it exits the sphere of radius capital. Okay. Now we can write down the current corresponding to this set of scattering particles. So we just sum over the outgoing and incoming particles, which are just free. Okay. Once we have the current, we can just write down the mu that is generated by this current, the electromagnetic field that is generated by this current. Let us discuss that. So this F mu nu is at order E because we have ignored the effect.
Sorry, what was the large T in the last equation?
Yeah, so this should be capital.
Oh,
yeah, capital. Yeah, so this is the point at which the particle exits that sphere. Should I go back? Yeah. So beyond this sphere and before coming in this sphere. Okay. So this is that value. This should be capital L. So this is of order of capital L. Okay. Now let us discuss the asymptotic expansion of F mu nu at order E. So around sky plus minus, that is that we are working at large U, F mu nu takes following form. It is of the form u to the power m by r to the power n such that m is less than n. So this is a convergent expansion. And so plus there are corrections which are at least exponentially suppressed. So these corrections would be the effect of the short range forces that are present inside the bulk, but these are suppressed at large U. So around large U, all these kind of corrections are suppressed, and we get a profile of following form. Okay. Now let us discuss a particular component of F mu nu, which is denoted here by FRA2. So our charge will be defined in terms of FRA2. That is why we are discussing its profile. So here the superscript 2 denotes fact that this is the coefficient of 1 by r square. So here n is equal to 2. This is that coefficient. Here A denotes S2 coordinates. This is a field on scribe plus minus. There is a sphere at scribe plus minus. So this A denotes the S2 coordinates. So this FRA2 is still a function of u and x hat. And at around large U, the leading term in this component goes like order U. Okay, so this coefficient is still a function of x hat, the angle. Then the subleading term is a constant in U, and then there are other corrections. Okay, so this is how the profile looks like at order E. Now we will include the effect of long range forces, and what we will see is that there are logarithmic corrections to this profile. In particular, there is a log U correction to this to FRA2 profile. Okay. Yeah. So the long range forces lead to new logarithmic terms in the field strength. Okay. So let us discuss the asymptotic dynamics, including a subleading term. So this is the equation of trajectory of an ith particle, and this represents the effect of the electromagnetic forces. So we will solve this equation perturbatively. What we do is we substitute the order E solution of F mu nu that we obtained earlier in above equation, and then we will expand this source at large tau since we are working asymptotically. So the leading order term turns out to be order E square by tau square. There would be corrections here, but this is the leading order term. Okay. So what we see is that the equation of ith particle gets a logarithmic correction. Okay. So let us briefly discuss what are the CIs. So CIs take following form. The exact expression is not important, but what we see is that this CIs get contribution from all other J's. So if this CI is corresponding to an outgoing particle, then it gets contribution from all other outgoing particles. So this J, the sum over J runs from all other outgoing particles. So this term represents the effect of the ith particle moving in the field that is generated by the jth particle. Okay, and at the end we sum over all the possible J's. Oh, yeah, and so the CIs for an outgoing particle will include contribution only from outgoing particles. That is because the outgoing particle will not feel the effect of the field of an incoming particle. So here we sum over only the outgoing particles. Okay. So this represents effect of a pairwise interaction between the outgoing particles, and hence it is order E square. Okay. Now we can find out the order EQ follow-ups in field strength. We just solved this equation where we need to use J sigma, which includes the order E cube terms. In particular, we saw that there are logarithmic corrections to the trajectory, and those logarithmic corrections would lead to order E cube corrections to the current. And we want to find out what is the field that is generated by those corrections. Okay, and what we see is that there are logarithmic corrections in the field. In particular, there is a log U term here.
Saili?
Yes.
So to understand this expansion, so there is a log U term, but it is in E it is subleading, right?
Right.
Okay, fine. Yeah, because I was thinking like log U is a large quantity as U goes to 0, but it is subleading in E. So
yeah, so here our expansion is at large U, since this is at scribe plus minus.
I see.
So yeah, so U is dominant with respect to log U.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, so yeah, that is because the free part of the trajectory goes like T, and the effect of the long range forces is like log T. So
log
they are
T,
yeah. So it is subleading there. That is reflected here. That it is subleading in U as well as subleading in the coupling. Okay. So this expansion in asymptotic parameter and the coupling goes hand in hand.
Okay, fine. Okay,
yeah. Okay. Yeah, so this is what we had at the future at Scribe Plus, that FRA has a log u by r square term, which we calculated in the last slide. Now we can repeat similar kind of calculation at the past null infinity. And what we show is that there is a log r by r square term at the past, which is a result of the long range forces acting between the incoming particles. Okay. Now, once we calculate these two terms explicitly, we can compare the coefficients of these two terms. And we can show that they follow an asymptotic conservation law. So this coefficient gets mapped to the one at the past after an antipodal map. Okay, so these two coefficients follow this kind of conservation equation. So this law was first suggested by Campiglia and Ladda, and we have proved it in the general scattering process. This is the first of the conservation laws that we will discuss. Okay, so just to emphasize, this conservation law involves order E cube modes. Okay, these modes were completely absent at order E, and these modes are a direct consequence of the long range forces that act between the scattering particles. Okay.
Siley?
Yes.
So the entire setup was sort of some particles are incoming and then they go to future null infinity, right? So how do you repeat it at past null infinity?
Yeah. So here I'm just repeating the calculation. So just like, so let me just, So the incoming particles, you can show that incoming particles will also get a correction.
Okay.
They will also get a logarithmic correction to the trajectories. And now you can ask, what is the resultant field at Scri minus?
Okay, fine.
Okay, and so what you actually find is that at past you get a log r mode. So all the radiative modes, they move to future null infinity. Since we are working with retarded boundary condition, all the radiation moves to the future null infinity. But still there are some Coulombic modes that are there at the past.
Okay.
So that, okay.
Okay, fine. Okay.
Yeah. So now we will include a subleading term in the asymptotic dynamics. At the subleading order, we saw that the particles accelerated and they radiated. Now, when we go to the next order, to the subleading order, we have to include the back reaction of the radiation. So this radiation will back react on the particle and it will correct the trajectory of the particle to the subleading order. Okay, so we start with the same equation. This is the equation for the trajectory, but this time we will correct this source by substituting the order E cube F mu nu on the right hand side of this equation. And what we find is that at e to the power 4, there is a log tau by tau cube kind of correction. So actually we can see, we can check that this is dominant than the correction that we have ignored earlier. So here the correction that we had was 1 by tau cube, and at e to the power 4 we get a log tau by tau cube. Okay, so this leads to the subleading correction to the equation of trajectory, and that goes like log tau by tau. So we can calculate the explicit form of this f, but that explicit form is not important at this point. So let us just go ahead. Yeah. So now we use this equation of trajectory and find the corresponding current. And once we have the current, we can just find out the F mu nu that is generated by that current. And in particular, we are interested in the subleading terms, which are of order e to the power 5. Okay. So include this order e to the power 5 terms under around future null infinity. This time, we will study the 1 by r square mode of FRA. Around u goes to minus infinity, it starts at order u square. Now this is the power law behavior that we had at order E itself. So this is an order E term. Then the subleading term is a u log u term, which is order E cube term. Okay. And finally, we have a log u square kind of term. This goes like order e to the power 5. Okay. Now similar calculations we will repeat around past null infinity. And we show that there is a log r square by r cube term. So this is the order e cube term that appeared in the first conservation law, which went like log r by r square. Then when we included the e to the power 5 terms, then there is a log r square by r cube term in the past asymptotic field. Okay, so again we can compare the coefficients. So we can compare this coefficient and this coefficient and show that it obeys an asymptotic conservation law. So that is what we show, that this
comparison is because like Ladda and Campaglia suggested, is it? Because one expansion is in one variable, another is in another variable.
Yeah, so if you do a coordinate transformation, then this u, when you expand this coordinate u at the past, then the leading order term is log r actually. So since this u will go r plus 2v, but at scribe minus, it will the dominant term will be log r.
Okay.
Okay. And the thing is, like, there are no log v modes at the past. Because we are working with retarded boundary condition, there is no radiation in the past.
Right. Yeah.
And there are only these Coulombic modes. Okay. That is another reason. And another thing, what one really needs to do is like start with a particular data at scribe minus plus, and then evolve it and see what you get at scribe plus minus. Okay, that would be the best thing to do.
Right.
Yeah, but here we are not doing that. We are comparing these two coefficients by calculating them independently. Okay.
Okay, fine. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. So this is the second conservation law that we prove, and these modes here appear at order e to the power 5. Okay. So let me summarize our results. So we have shown that there are conservation laws for following modes of F array. So at order e cube, the coefficients of log u by r square and the coefficient of log r by r square, those are equal under antipodal map. Similarly, at order e to the power 5, these kind of modes, the log u square by r cube and log r square by r cube, these are conserved. So we see that there is a nice structure to this conservation laws. Okay, so we propose that this kind of conservation laws should exist for all m modes of F array. So these modes are expected to appear at order e to the power 2m plus 1, where at the future you will have a log u to the power m by r to the power m plus 1 mode, and this would get equated to the coefficient of log r to the power m by r to the power m plus 1 mode. We have explicitly proved it for m equal to 1 to 3, and we propose that it should exist for all m's. Okay. So this is our result. Okay, so let me just go ahead. So this conservation laws hold in the classical theory, and we discussed that in the quantum theory, these charges are expected to give rise to soft theorems. Okay, so it has been demonstrated that the first of these conservation laws, the Q1 conservation law, is equivalent to the Sahusen's log omega soft photon theorem. This has been shown in these two papers. Okay. Now let us discuss what happens for m greater than 1, for the charges corresponding to m greater than 1. So using the form of the modes, the U dependence of the modes, we can argue that these QM charges should be related to the following terms in the soft expansion of amplitude. So if you set m equal to 1 here, then you get log omega as expected. So the Q1 charge will get related to the log omega mode. And similarly, the QM charges for m greater than 1 are expected to be related to the soft modes of this kind. Okay. So it is expected that the QM charges that we have here would give rise to theorems of this kind at loop level. Okay. And since the charges are e to the power 2m plus 1, these modes are expected to arise at higher orders in loops. So if you restrict yourself to one loop, then you would you would just get a log omega mode here. Only when you go to 2 loop, then you would get the next term. Okay, that is the expectation. And Vishwajit Sahu has derived the M equal to 2 soft photon theorem couple of months back. So this has been derived, but the mth level soft photon theorems for m greater than 2, they have not been derived yet. Okay, so that is the status. So let me just conclude. So we have proved a new set of QM conservation laws for m equal to 1 to 3. So this conservation laws involve modes that are order e to the power 2m plus 1, and these charges are very strongly tied to the long range forces. And we propose that such laws should exist for all m's. The first of these laws is equivalent to the log omega soft photon theorem that has been demonstrated, and it would be interesting to explore this equivalence for m greater than 1. So these are two important questions that need to be followed. Like, first would be to prove this statement, like prove this proposal that such kind of conservation laws should hold for all m's. Because of our approach, which is perturbative, it is difficult to do it in this approach. One has to do it, think of a different way. And then once that is done, the next thing is to understand the equivalence between this conservation laws and soft theorems for m greater than 1. Okay, that would be another interesting question. Okay, so thank you all for your attention.
Okay, let's thank Syed for that very nice talk. Okay, so let's have some questions. Any questions? I have one, but I will wait for if someone else has a question.
Saili, so this, I mean, I missed maybe what you said in the end, but this log omega, what you were saying is that you will get one more power when you do one more loop, right? So is that something that can be argued from the Sahu-Sen analysis also, or is it some new prediction that if you go for one more loop, you will get one more power?
Yeah, so there, so from the quantum analysis also, you need to extend extend the calculations to m loops,
right?
To see what happens at mth order. So initially in their 2018 paper, they had done the analysis only to one loop,
right?
And then they argued that that result has to be one loop exact.
Okay.
But that calculation Vishwajit extended in his recent paper to get this omega log omega square term.
I see. Okay, fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe I can ask a question. So, one of the things I want to understand is that your analysis is classical, right?
Right.
So, I wanted to know if you had any thoughts on what the status of this loop exactness is. So, you told us that the m equals 1 soft theorem by Biswajit and Ashok is one loop exact, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
What about your new conservation? I mean, what about your new soft theorems?
Yeah. So so that would be two loop exact. So the one at the m equal to 2 soft theorem, that would be two loop exact. Similarly, so all these terms are expected to be m loop exact. So they appear at mth loop exactly.
I see.
They do not.
How do you know that? I mean, how does that? I don't see how you're concluding that. I mean.
Yeah, so for the loop analysis, that has to be done via quantum amplitudes. But in the case of the classical conservation laws, so for example, we can check that the order e to the power 5 corrections, those do not affect the order e to the power e cube charges.
Because they are subleading?
Yeah, so let me just go back.
So e cube is m equals 1, right?
E cube is, yeah, m equal to 1. Yeah, so here when I'm talking about e to the power 5 fall-offs, then I'm just discussing FRA3, okay?
Okay.
Yeah, but the Q1 charge is defined in terms of FRA2.
Mm-hmm.
Now this profile I can again check what is this profile under e to the power 5 corrections.
Okay.
Okay, then you can show that this is uncorrected. That is because of the form of the corrections. So
I see.
here you can ask what is the leading order correction at order e to the power 4 here. Okay, so that is log tau by tau cube. Now using this leading order correction, you can show that every analysis that we have done for Q1 charge that is unaffected by this term.
Okay, I see.
So once you know that the leading term itself has not affected it, then obviously the subleading terms also won't affect it.
Right. I see.
Okay.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So when you look at the equation of the trajectory, then it seems natural because the corrections are obviously going to be subleading in tau.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So the mode that arises out of this 1 by tau square, that will not get corrected by this terms. That
I
you
see. I
can
see.
add.
Okay.
But it needs to be made really rigorous.
I see. I see. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I see. I have one more question, but it's very random. So maybe if there are more serious questions, we can have them.
I also have a vague question which I'll ask after Madhuv's random.
Like a hierarchy of vagueness. Like,
yeah.
Any other questions, guys? Okay, it appears not. So, sorry, this is like very random. Okay, but please bear with me. So, I'm just thinking about this one loop exactness thing, right? And so, one place where I know this arises, and so all anomalies are not one loop exact, of course. But the one that I'm thinking about is the chiral anomaly, and the one loop exactness in that case comes from the fact that your current conservation is essentially violated. So you usually your current conservation, just an ordinary vector current, like the current conservation looks like d mu j mu equals 0, right? But what happens when you have a chiral anomaly is you have a d mu j mu is like an integral f square. Not integral, sorry. D mu j mu is like f square basically, right? So it's just f wedge f. That's basically what it looks like.
Okay.
And so what seems to happen is that the fact that there is the fact that there is an anomaly and the fact that it is one loop exact really seems to. So what you do is you take this equation and then you integrate both sides over like d4x. Okay. So since the current is no longer conserved, your integral d mu j mu is now going to be the difference of charges, right? The change in of the charge in your system, right? Because it's a boundary term, and then you can just convert that into sort of the change of the charge. And on the right hand side, where you have this f wedge f type term, that basically computes an invariant of the gauge bundle. So it's like this instanton term. Okay. So the left hand side is quantized because you have like units of charge, and the right hand side is quantized because this this Chern class is quantized. This instanton number is like it comes in.
FHF is also like a total derivative, right?
FHF is a total derivative. That's right. But when you evaluate it on a non-trivial gauge bundle, then you can, for example, if basically when I say non-trivial gauge bundle, just think if I evaluate it in an instanton background. Then I get an integer answer, basically something proportional to an integer.
Okay, fine.
Right. So I'm just So these two things are somehow some non. So the fact that sort of instantons come into this game sort of relates something that looks like it's a fact of perturbation theory, but it really relates to something that's like non-perturbative. So which is the fact that you have these instanton configurations and stuff. So I guess my super vague question is like. Actually, I don't really have a question. I was just thinking about this one loop exact thing, but I don't know if you have any thoughts on like the currents corresponding to these conservation laws and is that something that would be interesting to look at? I don't know.
Yeah. So in the case that you're talking about, there the violation in the conservation is very exact, right? So that is one loop exact.
Yeah. The chiral anomaly is one loop exact. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I don't think really have like a
So
actual question
probably
here.
your question is like that is the one loop exactness over there related to one loop exactness over here?
Yeah, it may not even be the
something
same thing, but then I mean, do you feel like the one loop exactness is something that has to be explained, or it's just a fact of life? I don't know. I was just curious.
Yeah, so here the one loop exactness is related to the like the exponentiations that we have in the IR. So
Okay.
yeah. So the IR divergence is exponentiate, right? And
Okay,
similarly, this finite terms also exponentiate. And from there you can argue that this has to be one loop exact or two loop exact.
I see. So it really comes from the way you treat your IR divergences in the loop calculation.
Yeah. So these things are very much related to the IR physics. Yeah.
I see. Okay. Yeah, maybe I should take a look at that section of that paper. But thanks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now
And in
I'll
our
ask.
analysis, so in our analysis, since these charges, we expect that the charges won't get corrected by higher orders in the couplings.
Mm-hmm.
That should translate to the M loop exactness on the quantum side.
Right. Okay. That I see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Sailik, this is more of a question based on the framework. Okay. So once you obtain the conservation laws and maybe get a ward identity, right? What is the end goal? Like, what is the use of that ward identity? For example, like when people say quantum symmetries in quantum field theory, I know what that means. Like, it will constrain the theory in what ways, right? So here, like, there is some universal feature for like a whole class of massless theories, right? So I mean, since I have not studied asymptotic symmetries much, I just want to understand when people say, okay, this is a new ward identity, suppose, then what will that give us?
Yeah. So far what we have done, we have like we are yet to go to the symmetry part. So if you consider the leading soft theorem, then you have an asymptotic conservation law corresponding to that, and similarly you also understand the symmetry underlying it. So there you can actually say that AZ has to like mu the radiative data of the field, how it has to transform under the symmetry, like that is also understood. Okay.
That helps in so that understanding helps in something like defining the S matrix or something like that.
So the statement at the level of S matrix is already known. So those are the soft theorems. But here you also understand the charge algebra of your theory. Okay. So in addition to the usual Poincare transformations, we have another class of transformations which are exact symmetries of our theory. Okay. So this statement is understood at the level of leading soft theorem. At this subleading, since for the subleading sort theorems, we only have an asymptotic conservation law. What is the symmetry underlying it? That is not clear yet. So this analysis is a shortcut method to get those charges. Okay, but really we want to understand what is the symmetry underlying, like how the free data of the radiative field or the other scalar field, the hard particles that are present in our theory, how they transform under this symmetry. But that is not yet clear.
Okay, I see.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
so let me phrase it to see if I understood it right. So we know that relativistic quantum field theory has like Poincare symmetry, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we also know that it has soft factorization, so
Right.
as a universal feature. So now we ask that for these theories which have universal soft factorization, what is the symmetry that corresponds to this soft factorization, and then we will have the charge algebra corresponding to that. Is that the goal? Or?
Yeah. Right. Right.
Okay, I see. Okay. I mean, so they constrain the S matrices using soft theorem, right? That's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Okay. Thanks.
Yes. Yes.
Are there any other questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
A very quick question, so maybe this is the right one to ask it. This is sort of a follow-up of Subbu's question. So this really indicates there are more and more symmetries in the theories which have Poincare and the soft factorization.
Right.
But when you say symmetry, is it really, I mean, is it the symmetry of the action, the theory itself, or is it just the symmetry of the amplitudes at the level of the amplitudes? That is not known yet. Or what is the understanding of this symmetry? I mean, you can get the charge algebra most likely, but is it really a symmetry of the action?
Yeah. Yeah. So for the leading sort theorem, it is a symmetry of the action. Actually, since those symmetries are subgroup of the U1 gauge group.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So those are certainly the symmetries of the action.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is, though these are subgroup of the U1 gauge group, these are real symmetries. Those are not just gauge symmetries. The charges corresponding to this large gauge transformations, they act non-trivially on our physical states.
Yes, yeah. So these are the
Yeah.
improper gauge symmetries which actually change the physical state.
Yeah. Other gauge transformations will just annihilate the states.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So these are at the level of action also.
I see. Okay. Thanks.
So Saili, suppose like two people tell me that there are some different. I mean, I know that all these things are not directly related to what you have presented here, but since you know these things, so suppose two people tell me there are two different set of asymptotic symmetries. Okay, both are subgroups of the original gauge group. Okay, but using different considerations, people have given me these subgroups as the large gauge transformations that remain, right? Because people have different frames, right, in the literature. So how am I to interpret that from quantum field theory? Is that understood? Or?
Yeah. Yes. There might be frame dependence, but the for example the algebra of the charges should be same, right?
Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay. No, but like for example, like this Alok and like they have this Diffes2, and some other people have like Virasoro cross Virasoro, right? So it seems like different people have different prescription for the for the asymptotic symmetry. So I was trying to understand from quantum
these
field theory,
two-
where does it make a difference?
Yeah, so these two are actually independent proposals. Well, like those are two distinct proposals. Either one of the two has to be true. That is the thing. Unless
I see.
like
But
one,
is it known, like
unless one
physics-wise,
to,
what question to ask?
sorry? No, but so,
Physics-wise, is it known what question to ask?
yeah. Yeah, so let me just recall. So one set of people have proposed Virasoro, right? And the other set of
Right.
people have proposed DFS2.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I am asking this question now because I am saying that, like, because we were discussing how it would reflect on quantum theory, right? The issue is that suppose this is the starting point, okay? Starting point, or some kind of asymptotic analysis being the starting point, and then different people use different methods and arrive at these two different proposals. Is there any other calculation we can do to check which one is right, or so far only this approach is known?
Yeah. So one has to start with certain physics principle, right? Like so you look at some set of diffeomorphisms that leave certain things invariant, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So the idea is that your physics should dictate you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just that in these talks, it's never, I mean, not in your talk, I mean, in all these discussions, it's never clear to me, like, what's the physical principle. But
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is really an outstanding question. Okay. But right now, why we have moved to different problems is that this question arises at the level of tree level subleading soft theorems, right?
Mm-hmm.
The possible Virasoro interpretation or a DFS2 interpretation, it is for tree level subleading soft theorems. But since we know that these things are highly corrected by the loop corrections, that is why that question has it is on back foot now, because maybe that question itself doesn't make sense since it gets loop corrected.
I see.
Yeah. So we have now this log omega term that dominates the omega to the power 0 term. On the other hand, we also know that the omega 0 term has loop corrections. So maybe it might happen that the question of symmetry behind the omega to the power 0 term, that itself doesn't make sense. That might also happen.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. That is my understanding.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay, thanks.
Okay. If there are no further questions, are there any other questions?
Yeah, I had one question.
Sure.
So the conjecture that you made for general M.
Yes.
So is there like a way to, like, do you see a way to prove it directly, or is it something that can only be done order by order, or can there be like a way to prove it for general M?
Yeah, so I think one of the best ways is to do it via special infinity analysis. One I briefly mentioned earlier, like you start with the data at scry minus plus and then evolve it and show and see what you get at scry plus minus. Okay. Now, so there what you do is you basically solve Maxwell's equation around special infinity. So there, writing down the solutions for this general M modes, that might be more tractable than doing this kind of analysis. So I think that is the best. So this was done for tree level. Cambiglia and Ladda, they did this for tree level soft theorems. On tree level, at tree level also you have an infinite number of soft theorems, but those get corrected under loop effects. So there they did this analysis that you take some data at scri minus plus and evolve it. There it was they could write down a solution for general M, okay, for infinite number of M.
I see.
So, if you include the effect of long range forces on their analysis, that is the way to go, I think.
I see. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. If not, let's thank Saili once again for a very nice talk.
Yes.